If you walk down the same alleyway every day and you haven't said to yourself, well, what does happen if somebody comes out and stops me and says, hey, where do you think you're going, and grabs you by the arm? You know, are you visualizing what you're gonna do next? Have you thought through fighting through that scenario if you needed to fight through your life and getting good reps in mentally so when it occurs, it's not a shock to you and you don't sit there and hesitate wondering what you should do when your life's on the line.
The information in this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes. Our informational content cannot address all dangerous situations and cannot guarantee your survival or prevent injuries when the unexpected happens. The decision to carry a firearm, either for recreation or for personal defense, carries the risk and potential for injury and or death. Therefore, it is advised that you seek out and acquire proper training before using a firearm or any firearm-related product.
What are some self-defense techniques?
What would happen if there was a global internet outage?
What should I do if I hear shots ringing out?
Or what I should do if there's a major terrorist attack?
What should I have? What's the best?
What should I do?
What does that look like?
What would you recommend? Is there anything I could do?
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Dangerous Questions, an Ironclad original. This episode is going to be focused on traveling, and not only traveling, but traveling solo. What are the things that I'm thinking about? How am I arming myself? How do I go into a situation or even prepare to travel? I mean, realistically, we could talk about traveling anywhere, but specifically abroad. If we're going overseas, if we're going to Europe or anywhere else in the world, how are we preparing to do that, to be successful and to come back home safe? So let's get into our first question. All right, I've always wanted to travel outside the country, but the thought of going alone feels intimidating, which I'm sure probably a lot of people can relate to that. Especially as a female solo traveler concerned about becoming an easy target, what practical advice can you share to help ensure my safety while traveling solo? You know, I think just the mindset of asking the question, of saying that it feels intimidating, I think your instincts are spot on, because realistically it should. You know, it's a healthy thing to really analyze and think through. When I talk about preparation or going overseas, you know, realistically, it's a level of intelligence and awareness that you really should be applying. Some of the basic questions I'm even gonna ask myself: are you familiar with the culture? Can you speak the language? Do you have experience? Do you know anybody there? Are you in tune with what's going on in that environment? You know, a lot of the times what we feel like is going on here is not the same thing that they're dealing with in whatever country you're going to visit. So I think it's good to challenge yourself on that. Like, maybe you're not prepared to go. Maybe now is not a good time. I mean, realistically, I'm not going to take my family overseas to Israel anytime soon. I don't feel like I'm going to be putting them in the best situation possible. Could I go on my own? Sure. Well, now I'm calculating my level of experience, my confidence, my ability to link up with people that I know, understand security, understand threats, understand the cultural dynamic. Those are things that you have to weigh and really understand the risk. You have to understand your vulnerability. So I know that you're looking for the easy answer, but really it does start with, should you go or not? You know, and if you can answer that question, and if you feel intimidated, there's a good chance that maybe now's not the right time. Maybe you need to wait, and God's calling you to do something else. Maybe you need to trust the fact that that's what you're being called to, and you need to shift gears. Now, the other thing that I can say is that there's some really good agencies that exist out there. There's some guys that I know that have travel agencies, and I'm not just talking about like book your trip and your ticket, but I'm talking about, hey, give me the report on what's going on and where I want to go. I want to go to Italy. I want to go visit Rome, I want to visit Milan, and I want to go travel to those two places and then come home. Is it reasonable to think that I can do that safely? Okay, well, let's dig into how long are you going for, where are you staying, who are you visiting, why are you going there? And somebody that's really well trained and has a lot of experience can give you a pretty good read of whether this is the right time to go, and if you do, what you can do to prepare yourself. If I think about traveling, I'm always thinking in the state of being proactive to avoid these situations, to understand my weaknesses and my vulnerabilities, and to really prepare for them ahead of time. So again, the main thing is asking yourself, being able to weigh that vulnerability and say, is this the best time to travel alone to that place? Do I have a reason to do it? if your job is asking you to do it for a very specific reason, well, now you have a purpose, so you have to weigh that risk and then start to arm yourself in another way. And, if you can travel with somebody else, that's the A+ answer. You've got a buddy, you got a swim buddy to go with, somebody that can watch your back and be able to mitigate that vulnerability. But it's a great question. Be aware of what your vulnerabilities are. Next question. Okay, what are the most effective ways to secure my hotel room or Airbnb? A lot of these questions are very similar in nature, where it really starts to just allow you to shift your mindset, because I'm going to say, well, the most effective way to secure my hotel room or Airbnb is to have a really good firearm and very solid training, right? That's like the last case scenario. That's the last line of defense. If they break the door down, they get in the hotel room, they're standing at the foot of the bed, well, I'm going to rely on my skills and my training and my firearm. Now, that's what I'm going to encourage everybody to do. That should be the A+ answer. You should be on a journey to level up. If you've heard me talk before and you hear me have some of these hard conversations with you, it's that I'm challenging you to get that level of training, so that is your last line of defense. You're not worried about a chain or some little widget that you're hoping that stops the door from somebody breaking in. Like, sure, could I go, look on the internet and find a list of things that are going to help you, put monitors, cameras, little widgets you can put on the door? Yes, but I want you to be trained. I want you to be ready. That's the best thing that you can do. That's going to be more reliable than any of these other things. The other thing that I talk about often is a pattern of life. Are you staying there for a while? Are you creating a pattern of life that makes you look vulnerable? If I'm in an Airbnb or a hotel room, are you doing simple things like leaving the door open and the car open and, dragging a bunch of luggage in? You're not really thinking about the timing of that. Like, yes, the area you're in is going to affect that and affect your vulnerability. But remember, things can happen anywhere. Somebody could just choose that that's the neighborhood and that's the day and that's where I'm going to go do it. So just be aware of what you're doing to make yourself look vulnerable. There's something to be said for being a hard target. If my kids are getting stuff in and out of the vehicle and they're taking it to the room, am I out there with them with my head on a swivel and my head and my chest up, looking at anybody that could be casing out what we're doing and what we're up to? I need to be aware of that type of stuff ahead of time. The other thing is, Airbnbs, they typically have some type of electronic lock that people can get in and out of. They have codes that people could use. So know that really well, that that's a vulnerability. What can you do about that? Well, if the threat is high, you could look at adding something to block the door or doing something to slow somebody else down. In a hotel room, you're looking at security, so we all know that typically we don't want to pick the first floor, because the first floor is the quick smash and grab. They're going to kick the door in, grab whatever they can, and they're going to take off. If I'm on the second or third floor, well, I'm starting to reduce the risk of them wanting to come break in, and I'm also on a level that I can escape easily out a window or in a stairwell if I needed to. So that's the sweet spot. That second to fifth floor, it allows you to be in good access to escape ways. You're still within range of the ladder being able to pull up if there's a fire, and you also are out of touch of guys that are quickly just trying to pull up with a couple of guys, rough you up and steal what they have. Airbnbs, you have to weigh that risk. Just because you're in a hotel room or Airbnb doesn't give you the excuse to not know the layout. That's part of your security. You need to know the layout. Just like you know your room, your room and your house like the back of your hand, you really should challenge yourself to know that Airbnb and hotel room like the back of your hand. Because when something happens and it goes off, you're going to need to rely on that layout and your visualization, your memory. Even this last episode we talked about, being in a fire, right? Do I know the room well enough where I can get on a wall, I can anchor myself, I can reference, and I can get out of there if I need to? Know the layout, be aware, visualize what you can do to mitigate risk, get the training that you need, have the right equipment, the right tools, the firearm that you need to mitigate that risk. That's the best way. Everything else is really gimmicky to me. Know the layout and rely on your training and yourself to be able to mitigate that risk. Thank you, Mountain Tough, for sponsoring this episode. If you guys are looking to get in elite shape and great physical condition and boost your overall fitness, you can do it with the Mountain Tough digital training programs. Right now, it's free for 14 days. You can train anywhere you travel with minimal equipment, whether it's in the gym, outdoors, or even at your house. Their app offers expert, progressive plans to build strength, endurance, and resiliency to prevent injury and burnout. They have follow-along coaching videos that will keep you fired up and motivated at every level. Designed for mountain athletes, hunters, tactical professionals, and outdoor adventurers everywhere. Mountain Tough is led by elite athletes and military veterans. You can start your free trial today and use the code DANGEROUS at checkout for 40% off your annual subscription. These guys are locked on when it comes to elite physical fitness, and it starts from the ground up. Go check them out. All right, next question. How can I gauge whether someone's offer to help is genuine or a potential threat? Are there any obvious signs? Okay, this is something I think people ask themselves all the time, and I get this question often. And the first thing that I'm gonna say, you know me, I'm gonna jump right to the raw, hard question, and that is, are you trusting your instincts? Do you trust yourself enough in that moment to say, you know what, something just doesn't feel right? We live in a culture where everybody's afraid of offending anybody, and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And it's like, look, criminals are really good at pulling you in, like that flower trap. The Venus flytrap, right? They're like, they look all pretty, it's all good, everything's calm, and then bam, all of a sudden you're in a scheme, or now it becomes a threat. It manifests itself into a threat. So you've got to use your instincts. I know we all want to help people, but we're no good to anybody else if we're hurt or injured or getting duped into these situations where we're like, whoa, how did I end up here? You know, realistically, you need to be thinking about that. And if you're a person that doesn't have much training, look, please avoid the times and places that are going to put you in these situations to begin with. Stop going out late at night. Stop going into these areas that are putting you at risk to mitigate that risk until the point where you have some training and you can press in a little bit more. You know, until that point, you have to trust your instincts, because everybody wants to be nice, everybody wants to offer help, and I do too. But again, it goes back to being able to get the training that we need to build that confidence. Scenario training is the best thing to understand this and to do it even better, because it allows me to approach people over and over and over again and be like, something doesn't seem right here. Then I build confidence in myself and the way that I would react or respond. Here's the other thing that I'm going to leave you with. If you're worried about how to respond when somebody needs help, then visualize it, and also visualize it going sideways and something going wrong and what you're going to do about it. If you walk down the same alleyway every day and you haven't said to yourself, well, what does happen if somebody comes out and stops me and says, hey, where do you think you're going, and grabs you by the arm? You know, are you visualizing what you're going to do next? Have you thought through fighting through that scenario if you needed to fight through your life and getting good reps in mentally, so when it occurs, it's not a shock to you and you don't sit there and hesitate wondering what you should do when your life's on the line? So it's a great question, but you've got to trust your instincts, you've got to get the right training, and you have to visualize these things and plan for them ahead of time.
I'm Vince Vargas, the host of the Ironclad original Borderland. Last season, we took you on the front lines of the border crisis. That was just the beginning. Now, we're going deeper. On the new season of Borderland, Narcosis, we'll take an even closer look at the institutions, criminal forces, drugs, and operations that are driving mass migration from regions torn apart by violence and corruption. We're pulling back the curtain on the ruthless forces that drive mass migration. Organized crime.
All right, next question. All right, what's the best way to carry and access self-defense tools while traveling? Okay, traveling abroad has kind of been the theme, but it could be traveling anywhere. Now, I'm always going to talk about the combative principle when I'm traveling because I want to go armed. Regardless of where you're going, people are going to think right away, well, what do I carry for self-defense? Is it a blade? Is it a gun? Is it a non-metallic? Is it something I could use? First of all, before we even get into that, because they take a level of training, it's your mindset that I want you to go into. Just like if you were at a hotel or Airbnb or a restaurant, you need to act as if that's your restaurant, that's your place, that's your home. Everything in here is to my advantage to get in a fight with. And I can be violent with any bit of it that I need to protect myself or my loved ones. That's the best thing you can carry, is you're manipulating your environment and you're going into every situation armed. That is a mindset shift in itself. So I want you guys to think about that first. And now, if I can have something with me, well, that's just an added bonus. I can carry a firearm, great, that's the A+ scenario. I go into this with a blade, or maybe I have another tool, or a dynamis belt, or whatever the case may be. That's an added bonus to the already shifted mindset where I'm going to use whatever it takes, whenever it takes, to mitigate this threat to myself. I think that is one of the main things that I wanted to get across. Everything is a weapon. Everything around you is a self-defense tool while traveling. Whether you're on a plane, you're in a restaurant, you're through TSA, I want you to think that way, like, what can I grab? I mean, I'm already looking at several different things here I could use as projectiles, I could use to load my hand with, I could grab as an impact tool, I could use as a shield, I could grab that as a long distance tool, I can use these wires, these cameras, these tripods. If you are able to do that, then you're able to do something really well with the self-defense tools you actually have on you. So make that mindset shift first. Everything else is a bonus. All right, my favorite part, let's get to the scenario breakdown and see what video we have today. All right, so we're in a public environment and this girl is digging in out of her purse. Obviously, this is a quick snatch and grab. This is a guy that's rummaging around. He's got his back to people. He's just quickly trying to say, give me whatever you can. Phone comes out. She's probably like, okay, that thing's locked. He's not going to be able to get into it anyway. Hopefully her password's not 000. But that's it. Okay, so the thing is about what we're carrying on a daily basis, even in this situation, this is kind of low impact. Although I will say this, you have a guy being unpredictable. I do not like that, right? If I had my kid with me, or even if it was me sitting on that bus, there's a guy moving around grabbing stuff. Where should my hands be? This guy can get violent really quickly if he's not getting what he wants. If that's the case, and she had their purse right here, I'd have my purse up here and have my elbow and my arm in the way of my face. That way, if he does decide to swing or pull out a weapon, I've at least got a way to protect myself. And this is another scenario where, okay, he's not really telling me he's going to be violent yet, but I'm certainly not going to sit there to hang around. Maybe I move. Maybe I get my back against the wall. Maybe I get off the bus. Maybe as he turns his back, I'm moving. Or maybe he's yelling that I'm going to cut you, or he's got a blade in his hand, and I start to think about using my purse as a shield, or get in a position where I can get my hands up to protect my face. In these types of scenarios, and there's not a lot of context here, I want to be active. I want to be proactive with leaning into setting myself up for success. The opportunities to use a weapon here, her purse, her jacket, the thing over her shoulder, or whatever else is around him, it wasn't a violent situation, so she was lucky there. But be ready to use your environment to your advantage. Be ready to use what you have at your disposal to defend yourself. So the context of that, and I just asked the question, I was like, wait a minute, what happened there with the phone? So this was a little bit of the intelligence of preparation. Last little tidbit that I got before we wrap up is she did actually have two phones. So I caught that and didn't know this, and I just got that come through, where ultimately she had a double phone, knowing that it was a drop phone. It was a decoy in order for her to be like, there you go, here's my phone. Simple, he got what he wanted. And apparently in that area, that phone mugging was extremely high, right? The risk of that was extremely high. Another way to arm yourself, that's just intelligence and awareness of the area that you're going to. So she already had a drop phone. She said, here you go, no worries. Kind of maybe hold on to it for a second, like, oh, I really don't want to give this up. Oh, okay, make him feel like he has a win, and he steps off and she's pulling her real phone out. So you gotta be a thinker. You gotta adapt to the environment and be prepared. All right, guys, that's this episode of Dangerous Questions, an Ironclad original. Always appreciate your guys' feedback and questions. God bless you, and see you on the next one. Peace.
Ironclad creates premium content no matter the environment. From extreme elements to unforgiving terrain, we thrive on crafting content that captures the essence of your brand in the most challenging conditions. Bring your brand story to life, ensuring your message leaves an impact. Ready to elevate your vision? Connect with us today at ironcladagency.com.